It's going to be amazing. Let's get Esther up here. Where is Esther? A round of applause for Esther Legg-Bagg. I'm okay. I've had worse. That's going to go down in record. Also, my knee hurts. Who's first aid? So, as we said earlier on, Esther is from Abbey, and she also works with the Noise, and she's also chaplain for Bristol City football team, for the female football team, which is amazing. We're delighted to have her here. I'm not going to tell you too much about what she's going to talk about. I'm going to let her do that, but before she does, let's just pray for her. Yeah. Father, we thank you for Esther. God, we thank you for just the three amazing ministries that I know about that she's involved in and the amazing stuff that you do through her. And God, I thank you for her walk with you and the things that she's learned and the things that she's journeying with you. Just pray that you pour your spirit upon her now. God, I pray that your spirit would just soften our hearts to things that is that you want to say through her this evening. Will she know your joy as she brings your word to us? God, and will you challenge us and change us tonight? Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Matt. That's the best introduction I've ever had. How are you doing? You all right? Anything? Go on. Give me something. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. You've done enough tonight. Sorry, that's going to amuse me all evening. Right, so tonight we're going to have a little bit of a think and a chat about relationship. That's not in a kind of romantic relationship kind of way. I don't know if that's a relief to you, or maybe you're a bit disappointed. But as in like how we can do relationship together as a community, and how that's really important for Christians to do that. So, right, have a look at the people around you. I want to see you actually do this. Go on, have a look. Don't be shy. If you have a look at everyone, you'll see that you are all totally different. Is that right? There are no two people here that are the same, unless, do we have any twins? No? Okay, so you all are actually different. And I want to prove that. I want to see if there's anyone here that is a little bit like me. So, I want you to put your hand up and make a little bit of noise. If you are the oldest out of all your brothers and sisters. Anyone? Right. Okay, that's one thing we have in common. And put your hand up and give me a cheer if you love football. Okay. That's not very many. What about, is there anyone here who loves football and is also a fan of Leeds United? Unbelievable. I'm tempted to walk out, but I won't. What about, does anyone here love Converse trainers? Anyone? Yeah, we've got a few. Brilliant. What about, who thinks that cheese is quite possibly the best food ever invented? Yes! Enthusiastic cheese lover over there. And one more. If you could be in any band, any group that ever existed, you could choose any band in the whole world. Put your hand up and give me a cheer if that band would be the Spice Girls. Kate and Henry, anyone? Do you know who the Spice Girls are? Okay, good. Just checking. Right, so as you can see, there was no one here who likes all of those things. No one here that is exactly the same as me. So we all look different. We live in different places. We come from different backgrounds. We like different things. And not one of us is exactly the same. And if you remember anything from this evening, remember that we are all different, and that is a good thing, because it's the way that God made us. He made us to be completely unique. And sometimes I used to think when I became a Christian that God was going to turn me into some kind of like robot. And I was going to end up being the same as everyone else who was a Christian, like a Christian clone. But that isn't true. Like, we're all different, and God loves the things that are different about us. And we're going to have a look at 3 different bits from the Bible this evening. And they're all to do with community and all to do with doing life together. So the first bit is from a book called Genesis, which is right at the beginning of the Bible. And in the first two chapters, we read how God created the world. He created everything in it. And God keeps looking at it. He looks at everything that he's made, and he's like, kind of gives himself a bit of a pat on the back, and he says that it's good. So after everything he makes, he says that it is good. And then he makes man, and God kind of like pauses. And in Genesis 2, verse 18, it says, "The Lord God said, 'It's not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him.'" And this verse can be a bit of a tricky one because we can sometimes read it and think that God is talking about the whole romantic relationship thing. And that God is saying here, the definition of good is if you're in a relationship and ultimately married. And the definition of bad is if you're on your own. And that is not what God is saying here. I think that this verse, it says some good stuff about marriage and relationships, but he's talking about so much more than that. Like, God created the world and he saw that it was good. And he made man and he liked that. But then he saw how it could be even better for the man that he just made. And that was by creating someone else for him to work with and to do life with. Like, I don't know about you, but doing life on your own is hard. And trying to be a Christian on your own is really hard. And as well as being really hard, it's actually not a lot of fun. And I think that it's encouraging that we see here, right at the beginning of time, right at the beginning of the world, that God is laying out a plan and a blueprint for us. And that is that we are made to live in relationship. We're made to live in community. And that means that we, all of us here, we do the stuff of life together. We do the highs, the lows, and the boring bits in between. We're made to do it together and with other people. And that might sound maybe you think, well, yes, Esther, that's vaguely interesting. But, what does that actually mean? What does that look like for me and you today? So the second bit of the Bible that we're going to look at is in the New Testament, which is the second half of the Bible. It's in a book called 1 Corinthians, and it's in chapter 12. And we're going to read from verse 14. And this is what it says. It says, "Even so, the body is not made up of one part, but of many. Now, if the foot should say, 'Because I'm not a hand, I do not belong to the body,' it would not for that reason stop being part of the body. And if the ear should say, 'Because I'm not an eye, I do not belong to the body,' it would not for that reason stop being part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? But in fact, God has placed the parts in the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. If they were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, but one body." So Paul, the guy who wrote this, he's using a picture of the human body to describe us as a community of Christians, otherwise known as the church. And he's saying things like, what is the point of the foot moaning that it's not a hand, or an ear complaining because it's not an eye? What would the whole point? If the whole body was an eye, what would be the point of that? How would we hear, or how would we smell? And in the Message version of the Bible, it says, "An enormous eye or a gigantic hand wouldn't be a body, but a monster," which is a pretty good point. And that makes me think of there's a game called Would You Rather, which is one of my favourite games. So we're gonna play that a little bit now. So I'm gonna say, would you rather this thing or that thing, and you have to choose. You can't do a like, oh, well, maybe a bit of this, or maybe... You've got to choose, okay? So we'll use that example from the Bible. So if you had to have an enormous eye, and when I say an enormous eye, I'm saying an eye the size of your face, or a gigantic hand the size of that screen. What would you have? Okay, so an enormous eye or a gigantic hand. We're taking on the big questions of life here this evening. So, right, okay, can you put your hand up if you would rather have an enormous eye? Any reasons why? Why? Okay, if you had a big hand, you could pick up. Right, and so who would prefer to have the gigantic hand? Really? As big as that screen? What would you do with it? Slap people. Okay, so that's a good game to play. Would you rather? I'd encourage you to take that one home with you. But anyway, so try not to get distracted by the enormous eye and gigantic hand. That's not the most important thing I'm going to say this evening. But the point of these verses is that a human body needs all of its parts to do what it's supposed to do and to do it properly. And it's the same for us here. Like, as I said at the start, we're all different. We have different skills, we're good at different things. And so if we think back to the example of the human body, but right, if we could all play the guitar really, really well, but no one could sing, no one knew how to do whatever magic goes on at the back over there, like, maybe we might all get our guitars out and we'd strum along for 10 minutes and, well, it would just be kind of boring, wouldn't it? And, like, what if we all liked the same things? If we all liked the Spice Girls, the world would be a better place. But, again, it would just get a bit boring. Like, we might get a bit tired of listening to the Spice Girls all the time. Maybe. But we all need each other. Like, we need people who are loud. We need people who are quiet. We need people who like sport, people who like art. We need people who are good at all of that techie stuff. We need people who want to look after little kids, like Zoe and Susie were talking about, those kids that are under 10. And we need people who want to hang out with old people. And I mean people who are older than me. Oh, so I didn't mean to point over there. But yeah, like we need everyone. People who are good with words, people who can DJ, people who are visual, and so much more besides. And when I say that we need all of us, like, we really do need all of us, every single one of you here. And no one is excluded from being part of this body. Everyone has an important part to play. And one of the problems, I think, in this is that we don't always believe that. I can say to you, we need all of you. We need to do this together. But sometimes we don't believe it, because sometimes we spend time looking at people around us. And we pick out the differences. We have a look at someone and we judge them because of what they look like, and we just write them off. Or maybe sometimes we look at someone else and we think, I wish I had their haircut. I wish I had their cool clothes. And as we do that, we kind of write off the good stuff about ourselves. And the thing with the human body is some of the parts that you don't even look twice at are some of the most important bits. And I've got a little example for you here. So I want you to roll up the sleeve of your right arm. Right arm, that's this one here. Right, roll up the sleeve. And I want you, can you put your arm out like this? Okay, everyone. Yeah, that includes all of you people chilling out on the side. Right. Now, under your elbow, you should have a not very pretty, but flappy kind of looking bit of skin. Can you find that bit for me? Has everyone got it? You got it? This bit here. Okay, so everyone's got the gross flappy bit of elbow skin. Does anyone have an idea why do you think that bit of the human body might be important? Anyone? Well, I'm not really an expert, but I think that it's important that we all have the gross flappy bit of elbow skin, because if the skin was all nice and tight and pretty, like, we wouldn't be able to bend our arm. And we would all be walking around like this all the time, which wouldn't be really very practical for doing very much. So, I've got totally distracted by the flappy bit of elbow skin. It's a bit weird. But I want to encourage you to admire and to honour and celebrate each other's flappy bit of elbow skin. Like, we might admire each other's haircuts, but actually, which one is more important? Like, a haircut looks all right, but is it really vital to making the human body work? It's not. The flappy bit of elbow skin is. There's a bit of science for you this evening. But yeah, I've said it more than once, and I'm going to say it again, that we are all different, and God made us this way. And it is good, and it doesn't make any sense for us to be doing this on our own. And for us as Christians to be the church and to do all the things that Jesus has in mind for the church, we need each other, and not one part is more important than the rest. But here's the thing, and I'm going to be a little bit honest with you now. Like, church can be a little bit tricky and complicated. And I don't know you, I don't know what churches you come from, I don't know if you even go to a church, and I don't know what you think about either your own church or church in general. Like, you might think, I love my church, it's great, it's awesome, or you might kind of take a bit of a deep breath and roll your eyes and think, actually, do you know what? You don't know what it's like for me in my church. And to be honest with you, I properly love the church. And not just the church that I go to, but church in general. And that's not just because it's my job and I get paid to say that. I think the church is awesome. And the church is God's plan to make this world a better place. And I think the church is awesome, but I think it can be a million more times more awesome. But, like, I didn't always think like this. When I was a teenager, I went to church. And to be honest, I was mostly just really unimpressed with it. Like, I thought the songs were old and boring. I hated being told when to stand up and sit down. I thought most of the people were a little bit weird. Maybe that was just me. And, like, the speaking bit. Oh, my gosh, the speaking bit. Like, I made it clear what I thought about the speaking bit because I used to, on purpose, fall asleep quite a lot. And when I wasn't falling asleep, I was writing notes and passing them to my friends because when I was a teenager, we didn't have Instagram. We didn't have Snapchat. And to be honest, we didn't have mobile phones. But anyway, never mind. But I just found church really hard. And I loved going because I liked being with my friends. But I found myself living this double life where what I heard and what I did at church on a Sunday didn't match up to what I did Monday to Friday when I went to school. And I found that really hard. And your church isn't perfect. The people who lead your church aren't perfect. Like, church isn't a building. It's not just about Sundays. And I don't think church is supposed to be a painful thing that we're just meant to endure. But sometimes it can feel like that. And as someone who leads church, sometimes I find church a little bit painful. But it's good to be honest about that. But, right, this is the thing. And this is like a plea from me as someone who is involved in church and cares about the church. Like, I am 100% sure that young people, and that's you, like every single one of you here, like you are the key to helping church be the dynamic, life-changing, world-shaking thing that it is supposed to be. And I'm excited because I see bits of this happening all over the place. And I see a load of young people sat in front of me, and I know that you can be like sticks of dynamite that can, I want to say blow church apart, but that's not quite, but you know what I mean. Like, I want you to understand and believe that the possibilities for you and church and Jesus all working together are amazing, and they are huge. And come to, like, this is a great event. Come to this once a month. Meet new people. Eat burgers for £1. That is worth. I'm going to have one after if there's still some left. And do business with Jesus, but don't write off the church you go to for the rest of the month. Like, we, as slightly older people in church, like, we need you guys as part of our church. And we need you to challenge us. We need you to ask us difficult questions. We need you to say, well, why do we always do it like this? Like, we need you to step up and we need you to get involved. We want you to be a part of church. And don't ever write yourself off because you think you're too young. And don't let anyone within church do that to you either. So the last bit of the Bible that we're going to look at is from John 17. And before Jesus was killed, he said some prayers. And one of the things that he prayed, this is Jesus speaking, he prayed that all of them, which is us, may be one, then the world will know that you sent me. And Jesus said it, so this is really important and we need to listen to it. And it's important because Jesus is telling us why we need to be in community and why we need to be doing life together as Christians. And it's not for ourselves. It's not so we can have a nice, comfortable, cozy little church. It's not so we can hang out with people that only believe the same things that we believe. It's not so we can sing nice songs together and close the door off to the rest of the world. Like Jesus says, we need to be doing this thing together so we point other people to him. So when other people see us, when they see us here, when they see us wherever we are doing whatever we do in life, that they see Jesus. And we need to get out there. We need to not stay in our church buildings where it's easy and safe. And I don't know if you're like me, but in my kind of ideal Esther-focused world where I'm in control, like I would really like to have my life organised into lots of nice, neat little boxes. So in one box, I have my Esther being a church leader and Christian. In another box, I have my friends that I go to church with. In another box, I have my friends that aren't Christians. In another box, I have my slightly competitive and aggressive hockey-playing self. And in another box, I have Esther speaking at a youth event. In another box, I have so many other things. But, like, you know, sometimes we want life kind of separated because maybe that makes us feel a little bit safe. But this isn't the deal. Like, this isn't what Jesus is praying. He's not praying that we put our life into lots of little boxes. I think Jesus is praying, in the words of Robin Thicke, great song, very questionable lyrics. I think Jesus is praying that we have blurred lines. And I think in the next month you'll be looking at the kind of getting out there. And I'm not going to go into that now, but what I want to say to you is, if the thought of blurring lines, of mixing your I'm going to church on a Sunday morning, Sunday evening face with your I'm getting up and going to school face, if blurring those lines, if that scares you a bit, if that makes you think, I couldn't do that, then I want to encourage you, because this is where doing life together can be really encouraging. Because you don't have to do it on your own. And to be honest, we're not supposed to do this life on our own. We do it together. And we encourage each other. We can pray with each other. We keep going together because it's God's plan and it's his idea. He created us to be in relationship and to do life with each other. And when we do that, I think this being a Christian thing can be what it's supposed to be, and it can be properly good. And for me, I think that following Jesus is pretty similar to a roller coaster ride. In fact, I think following Jesus is a combination of Air, Smiler, Oblivion, and Nemesis. Who loves those roller coasters? Yes. I think following Jesus is like all of those rides all rolled into one, because it can be terrifying, it can be amazing, it can be mind-blowing, it can be eye-popping and stomach-churning, all at the same time. And you know, these kind of roller coasters, they're always better if you do them with other people. If I go to Alton Towers on my own, it would be fun, but when I've got myself off of Air, and it's just me on my own, who am I going to talk to about how good the ride was, how long I actually honestly managed to keep my eyes open for? Who would I talk to about it? And it's so much better doing Alton Towers in a group of people, with your group of friends, because you can scream, you can cheer, you can feel sick, and have your photo taken hanging upside down all together. And it's the same for us here. Figuring out what we believe and how we live that out, trying to live like Jesus did, and how to be him to the people around us. It's so much better when we do it in community together. And so I'm gonna stop talking now. And there are a few things. I don't know if any of what I've said kind of sounds familiar to you, or as I've been speaking, you've thought, yeah, I feel a bit like that sometimes. But there are a few things, and if any of these make sense to you, it would be great if you could be really brave and maybe ask someone to pray with you about this. So the first thing is, if you're, I talked about the body and everyone being a part of it, if you feel like you're on your own, in whatever way, then it would be great to pray with you. And the thing is, with feeling lonely and on your own, you can feel like that even if you're surrounded by a whole lot of other people. But if you feel like you're on your own, I'd love to pray for you. And the second thing is, if you feel like you don't fit, or you're not a part of this body that I talked about, then I would love to pray for you, or we would love to pray for you as well. So when I said that we're all a part of this body, and you're like, that's great, but I don't feel like that, then it would be great to pray for you. And the last thing, the blurring of lines. As I said, when I was a teenager, I struggled with church, and I would come to events like this, and they were great, and I loved them. But I knew that when I woke up the next day on Monday morning and I went to school, I would just be a totally different person. I couldn't figure out how I could follow Jesus and be a Christian and do my life at school at the same time. And that's a really, really hard thing. And I would, again, we'd love to pray for you. If you struggle with matching those two things up in life and blurring lines, then I would love to pray for you. So I'm going to hand back over to Matt now.